What's up, cool people? I'm Matt Conroy, and this is going to be quite a different video from normal. I got a request, actually, I think it was on my apartment tour video, to talk about a movie that came out fairly recently, within the past year, called The Lady of Heaven. Now, I totally don't know the person that made this request. I mean, I could look at their profile and whatever, but that doesn't tell me who they are personally. But anyway, so I thought about it a little bit. I watched the trailer and I was like, I have some things I might want to say about this. So because of that, here we go. So I'm going to try to get this. So I'm, showing you the trailer, and then I kind of might pause it and talk about it at certain points. Before I really get started with it, though, I just wanted to say a little bit background information on this that I kind of had to look up myself, because I knew nothing about this movie. There were some things I could guess based on watching the trailer, but apparently this is supposed to be related to or connected with the story of, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing this, Lady Fatima, who is supposed to be the daughter of the Prophet Muhammad, I think, if I remember that right. And if what I read is correct, she was basically one of the earliest victims of terrorism, or at least Islamic terrorism. And again, I don't know. I didn't want to look up too much information on this to be all oh, well, here's I'm not looking to analyze all sorts of, Islamic beliefs and traditions and things like that, just to get some more knowledge about this trailer. But I wanted at least some tiny little baseline knowledge of okay, what is this even talking about? Now the movie itself isn't even necessarily entirely her story. It's there's a branch, there's a kind of modern day story that's going on that kind of transitions into that by way of some family member, like a mother or grandmother, telling a boy about the story of Lady Fatima. So anyway, that's all the more I'm going to say in terms of backstory on this. So I guess we'll just try and get into the trailer here, and if I feel prompted to say anything in particular, I'll just pause it and then we'll keep rolling with it.
The world is in shock as a group of terrorists has taken control of large areas of Syria and Iraq.
The world can be a cruel and dangerous place. Remember, even if you're afraid, be strong.
So, early on, I mean, you can kind of tell the part of the world that this is in, and that I don't know if this is supposed to be taking place in Iran, Iraq, whatever, somewhere in the Middle East, clearly. Very heavily Muslim-oriented. And so a lot of the things that go into this, draw from that religious belief system, obviously. Anyway, I'm going to continue on.
Your loving mother, Fatima.
Did your mother ever tell you the story of the Lady of Heaven?
She was very special.
Daughter to the Prophet Muhammad.
Okay, so one thing that has caused some controversy around this video, other than just the fact that, it's based in Islam, and that alone stirs up controversy in some areas, but what within Islamic countries, it has stirred up some controversy by the fact that it has someone portraying Muhammad, just period. Because if I understand things correctly, generally the Islamic tradition is not a fan of actual like visual portrayals of the Prophet Muhammad. Just as some people would believe that, you know, for Christianity, that any visual portrayal of Jesus, it's bad in a sense because it's maybe not necessarily accurate, or, you know, it brings it takes away some of the spirituality, is what some people are concerned with when it comes to actual physical depictions of Jesus. And there's concern over, you know, worshiping a particular depiction or idol or viewpoint, or, you know, an idea of what Jesus, or in this case Muhammad, should look like, or something like that. But anyway,
my time is near, and afterwards, my lovely Fatima, you will face many trials.
With my father no longer here to lead us, evil is with those who will extinguish the light of truth.
You're gonna let a woman tell us what to do? We will burn her out!
Okay, so again, partially because the Islamic influence and background to this movie, that particular line talking about, you know, a woman ordering the men around or something like that, obviously from their viewpoint that would have been frowned upon. I mean, in some ways it is in Christian circles too, but probably to a bit of a lesser extent, I think, if my knowledge is correct. It's a bit less extreme in Christianity than it is in Islam, just because there are other things within, you know, the Bible, and I mean, really all throughout the Bible, but even specifically in the New Testament, about, you know, women having certain interactions with Jesus that, you know, makes it a little less taboo for women to even just, like, you know, speak their minds and maybe talk about certain things in amongst men. You know, what's discouraged more so in both traditions is the idea of women teaching men, especially on, like, spiritual matters. There are certain denominations of Christianity that are even looser than others when it comes to that. But in any case, you know, there are some connections between these belief systems that make them not completely outrageously foreign to each other. But one of the things that is my understanding is that, you know, there is still overall a bit of a different worldview because of, you know, one belief system, Christianity, holding to Jesus as the Son of God and, you know, actually being our Savior, you know, sacrificed for our sins and the only real way to get to heaven. Whereas Islam just views him as, you know, basically another prophet, a good teacher, but to my understanding, they view Muhammad as even more significant of a prophet and teacher, and almost put him at the level, maybe not quite the same level that Christianity puts Jesus, but very close to my understanding. Meaning that, in terms of his teachings and what he did, Islam views Muhammad's actions and teachings as almost higher than those of Jesus. But anyway, I could go on for hours about, perceived or actual differences between these belief systems, but that's not what I'm here for. Just letting you know the perspective I come into this with is going to be different, obviously, than someone who actually, is Muslim and holds to the Islamic traditions and beliefs.
God will judge all of you.
So, by the way, when it said this year, I think the trailer was actually released in 2020. The movie itself might have been released very late 2020 or early 2021 or something like that. But anyway, well, this particular, publishing on YouTube of the trailer is December 23rd, 2020. I don't know for sure if even the movie is actually completely out, or, if it might have gotten delayed for various reasons, or, if it is out, when it came out exactly. But anyway.
This world has become a breeding ground of violence. Its shadow will be cast across many generations to come.
So, I find that a very Hollywood thing to do. I air quote Hollywood. It's a very, movie production dramatized thing to do, to say, this is an untold story, or even the based on true events kind of idea sometimes I think is overblown a bit. But in any case, rewinding a bit, it mentioned, the world being a breeding ground for violence. And I think even earlier than that, it was talking about evil residing with those who want to, stamp out the truth or remove the truth or something like that. And I mean, true statement. Wanting to remove the truth is in itself evil. Different people believe different things to be true, and that's where a lot of our conflicts lie. But there's a lot of discussion about violence within this particular movie, just because, again, it's set in the Middle East, has the Islamic tradition in mind, and it's a very war-torn and violence-prone, historically, area of the world. And so if you're gonna set a movie in that area, there's going to be violence as a significant theme all throughout. Whether or not you believe what exactly this movie says in regard to violence.
It said some people are so full of faith. They give strength to everyone around them.
The greatest thing in this life and the hereafter is the spreading of peace in the world.
Lady Fatima's goodness inspired people to stand up, no matter what the cost. Her legacy lives on.
So, yeah, anyway, that was the full extent of the trailer. And, of course, obviously, it's a very dramatized version of whatever the story is that it's actually trying to capture. I'm not one to be able to comment, even if I watch the full movie, how close it is to the actual historical account or whatever, because I am not of that faith tradition, so I don't know. But anyway, the call for peace, I think, is something that obviously a lot of people could get behind, no matter what your beliefs. And I think even from a Christian perspective, there are times when we need to hear more of that. I think some Christians will spend so much time just, bickering over who's right and who's wrong, especially from a theological perspective or whatever, that sometimes we forget to stop and actually, care about people first. But that's not these days anyway. It's not so much of the actual physically violent, it doesn't manifest itself in a physically violent way for most Christians, although it has throughout history. A lot of people who disagree with the Christian faith and tradition or whatever say, well, look how often it's been used as a justification for violence. And to that, I would say, well, those were misguided people. That was not actual Christian faith, belief, and tradition that caused that. The closest case that you could argue for it being actually connected, a historical instance of Christian violence that would have been at all theologically prompted or accurate or anything like that, would have been the Crusades. But that was just because people were so adamant in that time about basically, Jews residing in the Holy Land of Israel. And even that was, many people would agree that was misguided in some ways, turning to violence as a way of reclaiming the promised land or something like that. So, yeah, anyway, again, I would expect the theme of violence to be very heavy in this movie, and it's going to deal with that from a Muslim viewpoint. So, obviously, there are going to be things that some people agree with or disagree with, just like a lot of Christian movies will get flack for trying to depict God and or Jesus in a certain way, or, that there are inaccuracies or dramatizations or whatever of things within the Bible. I would expect similar thoughts, backlash, responses from Muslims in regard to this movie. And I've already seen some of it, read just tiny little blurbs about it online. But in any case, I do think that, in a way, there are lots of similarities when it comes to that tradition and history of violence between Christianity and Islam, meaning that within their traditions, they both have a lot of violence involved. I mean, look at the Old Testament and how many times there were battles, wars, and whatnot over, getting into the promised land, expanding the kingdom, different things like that. And the methods of violence within the New Testament, or even the instances of it, were a little more individualized and smaller scope, you might say. But the New Testament call more so towards love and peace and all that, in light of the war-torn past of, the Jewish and Christian traditions as told in the Old Testament, I think could probably hold some similarities to this story of the Lady of Heaven, Lady Fatima, and that response to the war-torn past of Islam. Now, of course, the methods of responding to it seem vastly different, because this seems almost like it's responding to violence with violence, in a similar... I'd almost compare it with, how, for lack of a better example, I'd almost compare it with the life of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and how, he was pacifist for most of his life, believed in peace and never wanted to resort to violence, but in the face of extreme violence and genocide even, he ultimately kind of came to the conclusion that, maybe there are things that are worth fighting for, or at least worth defending. Now, this wasn't like an all-out, let's gather a rebel group and physically fight against the Nazis or anything like that. But it was still it was almost more of an underground movement of let's actually fight for what's right. Whereas this, in the Lady of Heaven seems to be more of a, all right, let's build a resistance and physically fight for what's right. Let's, stand for peace, even if it means that, we have to become violent ourselves towards those who incite violence. It's a very contradictory kind of thing, but at the same time, in a fallen, imperfect world, sometimes that does seem to be the only way to get to actually achieve physical peace in the face of violence. Now, there are people, Christians, who believe that Jesus would have said, no, we are not called to be violent, we are called to love. But there's some room for debate there because of the nuances in things that were said, and, add to that the fact of whenever Jesus comes again, it will not be a peaceful return. So, ultimately, in order to stamp out the violence and sinful threat of Satan and his minions, there will be violence in order to bring about eternal peace. Now, it's not necessarily calling us to do likewise as things currently are, but it's a very it's a complicated thing to sort out. Like, what do you do in the face of violence? And people have responded in various ways to this throughout history. You have some who never became violent. You have others who just immediately would say, if this is actually worth defending, we need to fight for it. And you have others who, you know, kind of fall at different spots along that spectrum. But anyway, yeah, those are the main thoughts that I had related to this movie. And I realize, this trailer for the movie. And I realize it might have been kind of long and drawn out, and I apologize for that, but I wanted to make sure that I got all of my thoughts out there and tried to explain them as reasonably and thoroughly as I could, so I didn't, you know, leave something unsaid or misspoken that, you know, I really meant one way, even though I said a different thing in a certain moment. But anyway, so to the person who requested this, I will let you know. I'll specifically comment back to you whenever I post this, so hopefully you'll watch this video and maybe we can engage in some discussion. But anyway, that's all I'm gonna say for now, because I feel like I've rambled on long enough for not wanting to carry on for hours on end about, you know, differences in belief systems. So anyway, that's gonna do it for now, I guess. So as always, like and share if you enjoyed the video. Look down in the description for info on my social media pages and how to find and follow those and interact and everything. And of course, leave comments down below with any thoughts that you have, any other suggestions for movie trailers I should react to, or just different topics to talk about, different things like that, or anything you have related directly to this. Leave comments down below. Just keep them civilized, please. So anyway, as I said, that's all for now. So I hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you for the next video, whatever it might happen to be. But until then, stay cool, people.